The Hey Eddie podcast is brought to you by Is your name boring? Does nobody tremble when they hear it? Come to Sons of Thunder Name Change Services. We'll give you an awesome nickname just like Jesus gave James and John. Tired of being called Billy? How about Lightning Fist? Is Susan too plain? Try Storm Queen. Our most popular package includes a dramatic nickname, a theme song, and a small fog machine so you can make an entrance. Sons of Thunder Name Change Services. Because Steve from accounting doesn't strike fear into anyone. Warning, nicknames are not legally binding, fog machine sold separately. We are not responsible if your mom still calls you Sweetie Pie in front of your friends. This is the Hey Eddie podcast. I'm your host, Cousin Michael. The Hey Eddie podcast is dedicated to helping kids like my cool cousin Eddie learn about the Bible and learn important lessons about God, about Jesus, and about life. The Bible is indeed God's gift to kids, a lamp to our feet and a light to our path. On today's episode of the Hey Eddie podcast, we're going to be studying Mark chapter 3, verses 7 through 35, in a lesson titled, The New Family. This lesson will teach us that Jesus is creating a new family, and you become part of it not by who your parents are, but by following Him and doing God's will. Our key memory verse is Mark chapter 3, verse 35. Whoever does God's will is my brother and sister and mother. Hey Eddie, who's in your family? Besides Cousin Michael. Well, you've got a mom and dad and a brother and cousins and grandparents and aunts and uncles. Family is important, right? Well, today's story is about how Jesus started building a new kind of family. Not a family based on who your parents are, but a family based on following Him. Jesus picked 12 special helpers, got accused of working for the devil, and then said something shocking about who His real family is. Ready? Let's go. After the religious leaders started plotting against Jesus, He went down to the lake with His disciples, but He couldn't hide. People came from everywhere to see Him. From Galilee, where Jesus was, from Judea and Jerusalem, way down south, and from Idumea, even further south, from across the Jordan River to the east, from Tyre and Sidon, way up north outside Israel. The crowd was so huge that Jesus asked His disciples to get a small boat ready. Why? Because people were practically crushing Him, trying to touch Him. They had heard about all His healings, and everyone with a disease was pushing forward, hoping just to touch Jesus and be healed. And the evil spirits? Whenever they saw Jesus, they fell down before Him and screamed, "You are the Son of God!" Even the demons knew who Jesus really was, but Jesus told them to be quiet. It wasn't time for everyone to know yet. Then Jesus went up on a mountainside and did something really important. He called certain people to come to Him, the ones He wanted, and they came. Out of all His followers, Jesus chose 12 to be His closest team. Why 12? Because there were 12 tribes of Israel. By picking 12 men, Jesus was showing that He was starting something new, like God creating a new people. These 12 would be called apostles, which means sent ones. They had 3 jobs. Number 1, be with Jesus. They would live with Him, travel with Him, learn from Him every day. Number 2, preach. They would tell people the good news about God's kingdom. Number 3, drive out demons. They would have the power to kick out evil spirits, just like Jesus did. Here are their names. Simon, Jesus gave him the nickname Peter, which means rock. James and John, the sons of Zebedee. Jesus called them sons of thunder. How cool is that? Andrew, Peter's brother. Philip, Bartholomew, Matthew, the tax collector. Thomas, James, son of Alphaeus. Thaddeus, Simon the zealot, a patriot who probably hated Rome. And Judas Iscariot, who would later betray Jesus. Look at that list, Eddie. A tax collector who worked for Rome and a zealot who probably hated Rome on the same team. Jesus brought together people who would never have been friends and made them into a family. Jesus went into a house and again a crowd gathered. It was so packed that Jesus and his disciples couldn't even eat. When Jesus' family heard about this, they came to take charge of him. Why? Because they said, he is out of his mind. Yep, Jesus' own family thought he had lost it. His mom, Mary, and his brothers came to pull him away from all this craziness. But wait, it gets worse. Some teachers of the law came all the way from Jerusalem, and they had a really nasty accusation. He is possessed by Beelzebul, by the prince of demons. He is driving out demons. Beelzebul was a name for Satan, the chief of all evil spirits. So these religious experts looked at Jesus casting out demons and helping people and said he was doing it by the power of the devil. Jesus called them over and asked some simple questions. How can Satan drive out Satan? If a kingdom is divided against itself, it cannot stand. If a house is divided against itself, it cannot stand. Think about it. If Satan was fighting against his own demons, his kingdom would fall apart. That doesn't make any sense. Then Jesus told a little story. No one can enter a strong man's house and carry off his possessions unless he first ties up the strong man. Then he can rob his house. Here's what Jesus meant. Satan is the strong man. Satan's house is all the people he controls through demons. Jesus is the one who ties up the strong man and rescues the people. Jesus wasn't working for Satan. He was defeating Satan. Every time Jesus cast out a demon, it proved that God's kingdom was winning and Satan's kingdom was falling apart. Then Jesus said something very serious. Truly, I tell you, people can be forgiven all their sins and every slander they utter. But whoever blasphemes against the Holy Spirit will never be forgiven. They are guilty of an eternal sin. Whoa! That sounds scary. What does it mean? Mark tells us exactly why Jesus said this. He said this because they were saying he has an impure spirit. The religious leaders saw the Holy Spirit working through Jesus, healing people, freeing people from demons, and they called it the work of Satan. They looked at God's power and called it evil. This wasn't just a mistake. This was deliberately rejecting God's rescue plan and calling it demonic. If you reject the only cure, how can you be healed? But here's the good news, Eddie. The fact that Jesus gave this warning means there was still time to change. He was trying to shock them into seeing how wrong they were. And notice what Jesus said first. People can be forgiven all their sins. God's forgiveness is huge. He wants to forgive everyone who comes to him. Then Jesus' mother and brothers arrived. They stood outside the house and sent someone in to get him. Someone told Jesus, "Your mother and brothers are outside looking for you." And Jesus said something surprising. "Who are my mother and my brothers?" Then he looked at the people sitting in a circle around him, the ones who had come to hear him teach, and said, "Here are my mother and my brothers. Whoever does God's will is my brother and sister and mother." Wow! Jesus wasn't being mean to his mom, but he was making an important point. Your real family isn't just the people you're related to by blood. Your real family is the people who follow God together. The religious leaders rejected Jesus. His own family thought he was crazy. But the people sitting around him, listening to his teaching, wanting to do God's will, they were his true family. And that means you can be a part of Jesus' family too. So what does this mean for you? First, Jesus invites all kinds of people into his family. Tax collectors, zealots, fishermen, people who would never hang out together normally. Jesus brings them together. No matter who you are or where you come from, Jesus has a place for you. Second, following Jesus might make some people think you're crazy. Even Jesus' own family didn't understand him at first. If people think you're weird for loving Jesus, you're in good company. Third, don't call good things evil. The religious leaders looked at God's work and called it Satan's work. Be careful not to reject what God is doing just because it doesn't look the way you expected. Fourth, God's forgiveness is huge. Jesus said people can be forgiven all their sins. Don't ever think you've messed up too badly for God. He wants to forgive you. Fifth, You're part of Jesus' family. If you want to follow Jesus and do what God says, you're his brother, part of his family. You belong to him and to everyone else who follows him. So welcome to the family, Eddie. It's the best family there is. This has been the Hey Eddie podcast. I'm your host, Cousin Michael. Remember that the Hey Eddie podcast is dedicated to studying the Bible and learning important lessons about God, about Jesus, and about life. Today we discussed Mark chapter 3, verses 7 through 35. Tune in soon for another episode of the Hey Eddie podcast, where we'll study Mark chapter 4, verses 1 through 20. Love you, Eddie.